and welcome back to Ron Hasn't Seen, the channel where I review movies I should have seen a long time ago. Today, we're moving from our 70s series to movies released in the 80s, much like myself. And we're starting with the cult classic 1989's Roadhouse. It's an action movie directed by Rowdy, yes, Rowdy Harrington, and written by David Lee Henry and Hilary Henkin, starring Patrick Swayze as James Dalton, Sam Elliott as Wade Garrett, Kelly Lynch as Dr. Elizabeth Clay, and Ben Gazzara as Brad Wesley. Simple movie. The plot follows Dalton, an apparently legendary and well-known bouncer, who gets brought in from, I think, New York City to clean up the Double Deuce Bar in Jasper, Missouri. The bar is being overrun with general troublemakers, particularly Brad Wesley's crew of thugs. Dalton has to clean up the bar and eventually the entire town of Wesley's influence by both always being one step ahead of everybody and just being really good at bar fighting. At one point, Wesley has Wade Garrett, who is Dalton's mentor, killed, so Dalton eventually storms Wesley's house. When after he turns his back on the injured Wesley, the townspeople all show up and just shoot the wannabe gangster and just tell the cops nothing happened. And that's, the end of Brad Wesley, and Dalton, lives to walk off into the sunset. Now let's just start off with one thing. The film isn't really good. It's a hell of a lot of fun, but it's not good in a classic sense. It is the epitome of cheesy 80s action. It's overacted, melodramatic, and cliche around every corner. But I enjoyed it a lot. An audience seemed to take it that way as well. It grossed $61 million internationally on a $15 million budget. But critics didn't really love it, and it received 5 Razzie nominations. But it was written in the Razzie Movie Guide as one of the 100 most enjoyable bad movies, and that's where it fits. It's a perfect example of the 80s over-the-top action like Commando, Cobra, Red Dawn, including some of the late 80s later, martial arts style stuff like Bloodsport or Above the Law. It's not a classic, but it is iconic. Dalton and the Double Deuce are fairly common pop culture references. And, taking place smack dab between Dirty Dancing and Ghost, it's primetime Swayze. The fights are fun, the sex scenes gratuitous, the dialogue ridiculous. It's a perfect Saturday afternoon vegging on the couch kind of film. And that's where it became the cult classic. It was easy to edit for basic cable. The video rentals are what turned it into this cult film. That kind of just random watching. And Kelly Lynch's character is clearly just, around to show some more nudity. As a few other characters are, but that kind of all gets eclipsed by Swayze's butt, in the film. The villains don't feel like a real threat to Dalton until the very end when they finally get guns. Most of the time they feel like high school bullies who've grown up. And Dalton's history about accidentally killing a man by ripping out his throat is itself a little over the top and cliche and really didn't need to be there. Basically, there's not one thing original about the film, not one thing that grabs you, but a total ridiculous mess that I somehow love. If you want a brain-off fun movie, I just gotta recommend it. I know it's a bit of a different review. I'm not going into depth of history or anything, because really there's not much to say. It's a movie that might, be this cult classic, but it doesn't live up to the real 80s action, staples like Die Hard or Aliens. It's not that good, but it's as fun as anything Schwarzenegger did in the era. And it, kind of fed into that whole rise of Van Damme and Steven Seagal, people just doing roundhouse kicks for no reason kind of fighting. And that's where the movie fits in. And you know what? If that's what you want, it's a perfect example of it. It's a perfect movie you need to watch just to get references to that. And as cliche as it is, it kind of feels feasible as a story. It's over the top and all that, but other than the world famous bouncer kind of thing, You know, the small town being overrun by the one guy with money. You know, everything makes sense in a, cliche kind of way. But I really liked it, and a good start to the 80s series by being just so 80s. So that's it for Roadhouse. Next episode, I'm moving on to John Hughes' Pretty in Pink. One of those John Hughes movies that just somehow escaped my view. So thank you guys for watching Ron Hasn't Seen. If you like what I'm doing, please like the channel, subscribe below, and I'll see you next week. Thanks and have a good night.